It was a warm September evening in 1965 on Beale Street in Memphis, Tennessee, one of the most musically alive stretches of road in the entire country, the kind of place where clubs spilled music out onto the sidewalk and the energy of the street itself felt like it was vibrating at a frequency you could feel in your chest before you even consciously heard anything. Elvis Presley was behind the wheel of his white Cadillac, heading back toward Graceland after spending the evening with friends, moving slowly through the evening traffic the way you do when you are not in any particular hurry and you are enjoying the pulse of a street you have known and loved for most of your life. Beale Street had helped shape Elvis long before he ever set foot inside a recording studio, and he liked driving through it at night when the music was out and the whole place felt electric. As he rolled past a corner near one of the barbecue restaurants, he caught a brief glimpse of a figure sitting on the sidewalk with a guitar, and something in what he heard in that fraction of a second made him look twice. Street musicians were a common sight on Beale Street, but there was something about this one that registered differently. The kid looked young, maybe 15 or 16 years old, wearing clothes that had seen a lot of use, sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk with a battered acoustic guitar across his lap. Elvis was already past the corner by the time his brain caught up with what his ears had picked up. That was one of his own songs the kid was playing. But what the kid was doing with it was something entirely different from the original. He had taken the melody and pulled it in a darker, deeper direction, running blues progressions through it that made the song sound both completely familiar and completely transformed at the same time, as though someone had taken Elvis's rock and roll version and traced it all the way back to the older, rawer blues tradition it had originally grown out of. Elvis hit the brakes. The driver behind him honked in frustration, but Elvis did not move forward. Instead, he carefully reversed the Cadillac, easing it back along the street until he was sitting directly across from the kid on the corner. The boy had not noticed any of this. His eyes were shut, his head tilted slightly forward, and he was entirely lost inside the music he was making. His fingers moved across the strings with a confidence and sureness that seemed completely out of proportion with how young he was and how worn the instrument looked. The guitar itself had clearly been through a great deal, scratched and dented with the kind of wear that accumulates over years of heavy use, the sort of guitar that looked like it was being held together more by determination than anything else. But the sound coming out of it was clean and real. Elvis rolled the window down and let the September air in along with the music, and up close it was even more striking than it had been from a distance. The kid had taken a melody that Elvis knew as well as he knew his own name and woven something genuinely new through it, something that felt learned not from records but from the ground up, from church pews and late nights in small blues clubs and from someone older sitting nearby and showing him how it was really done. A few people walking past on the sidewalk had noticed the white Cadillac sitting with its window down in the middle of Beale Street traffic, and a couple of them were squinting over at the driver trying to make sure they were seeing what they thought they were seeing. Elvis paid them no attention. He was listening. This kid had something that could not be manufactured or drilled into someone through lessons. It was feel, pure instinct, the kind of deep natural musicianship that Elvis recognized immediately because he had spent his whole career drawing on exactly the same quality in himself. When the song ended, the boy opened his eyes, and that was the moment he saw the Cadillac sitting across the street and the man watching him from the driver's seat. For a brief second, neither of them moved or said anything. Then Elvis leaned out slightly and asked him where he had learned to play like that. The kid's eyes went wide and his mouth came open, but no sound came out of it. He had clearly recognized Elvis, and the recognition had frozen him completely. Elvis told him gently that he was not upset, that he just wanted to know where the boy had learned to do what he had just done with that song. The kid managed to swallow and then said Mr. Presley in a voice that was barely holding together. Elvis confirmed who he was and asked him again to answer the question. The boy said he had taught himself partly from records but also from his grandfather, who had played blues before he passed away and who had taught him what he called the real way to play, the old way. Elvis repeated those words, the old way, and nodded slowly. He said he could hear exactly that in what the kid had been playing. He asked him his name. The boy said Marcus Williams. Elvis asked how old he was and Marcus said 16. Elvis asked how long he had been playing and Marcus said since he was 8 years old, that his grandfather had given him the guitar before he died and that it was the one sitting in his lap right now. He looked down at it and said it was not much but it still played. Elvis was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he asked Marcus whether he had anywhere he needed to be that evening, whether there was a job or school or parents expecting him home. Marcus said he lived with his mother and that she knew he sometimes came out to play on the street and try to earn a little money. He gestured toward the guitar case sitting open at his feet. Elvis looked at it for the first time and noticed it was completely empty. This kid had been out here playing extraordinarily well, and had not made a single dollar. That sat uncomfortably with Elvis in a way he did not try to push aside. He asked Marcus how much he was trying to make that evening. Marcus said just whatever people felt like giving. Elvis told him that was not a number and asked him again how much he actually needed. Marcus looked uncomfortable and said that $5 would be good, that it would help his mother with groceries. $5. Elvis had spent more than that on lunch without thinking about it twice. This kid was out on Beale Street on a September evening playing his heart out beautifully, and the goal was $5 for groceries. Elvis made up his mind. He told Marcus that what was going to happen was this: Marcus was going to play one more song right now, and then the two of them were going to take a short ride somewhere. Marcus looked alarmed at that, and Elvis told him to relax, that he was not kidnapping anyone, that he just wanted to take him somewhere and that he would be back within an hour or two at most. He asked Marcus if he trusted him. Marcus looked at Elvis, then at the Cadillac, then at the situation he had somehow found himself in, and then he nodded and said yes sir quietly. Elvis told him good and asked him to play something for him now, but not his song this time. He wanted to hear something of Marcus's own or something his grandfather had taught him. Marcus thought for a moment and then began to play. It was an old blues piece, the kind that had come out of the Mississippi Delta, the kind that had never been written down anywhere and had existed purely as something passed directly from one set of hands to another across generations. Marcus played it with a weight and a feeling that was genuinely difficult to reconcile with the fact that he was 16 years old. He played it like someone who had already lived through things that leave a mark. When he finished, Elvis sat without saying anything for a moment. Then he got out of the car, and that was when Beale Street really started paying attention. Elvis Presley stepping out of his Cadillac and walking toward a kid sitting on the sidewalk with a guitar was the kind of thing that drew people in fast, and within seconds a small crowd had started collecting itself around them. Elvis walked over and told Marcus, ignoring the audience forming around them, that it had been beautiful and that his grandfather had taught him well. Marcus, still sitting on the sidewalk looking up at Elvis, thanked him and said he still could not quite make himself believe this was actually happening. Elvis told him to put the guitar in the case and get in the car. Marcus looked confused. Elvis asked him again if he had said he trusted him and told him to put the guitar away and get in. Marcus carefully laid the guitar into the case and closed the latches, his hands visibly shaking as he did it. Elvis could see people in the gathering crowd whispering to each other and some of them starting to drift closer wanting to talk to him and get autographs. He told Marcus to come on before the whole thing turned into a bigger situation. Marcus scrambled up off the sidewalk, grabbed the guitar case, and followed Elvis to the Cadillac. Elvis opened the passenger door for him and Marcus got in looking dazed. Elvis walked around to the driver's side, got in, and pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror he could see the crowd standing behind them, talking and gesturing and trying to work out what they had just witnessed. Marcus asked in a voice just above a whisper where they were going. Elvis told him a guitar shop, that he knew the owner and that the man stayed open late. Marcus asked why a guitar shop, and Elvis told him plainly that he could not keep playing on the instrument he had because it was dying, and that Marcus needed a real guitar. Marcus stared at him and started to say that he could not afford anything like that. Elvis cut him off and asked whether he had said anything about Marcus affording it. He told him he was buying Marcus a guitar, that was what was happening, and that Marcus could accept it without making a fuss or he could argue about it. But either way he was leaving that shop that night with a new instrument in his hands. Marcus did not say anything else. He just sat there in the passenger seat looking like he was trying very hard not to cry. They drove to a music shop on Union Avenue and when the owner, a man named Carl, looked up and saw who had just walked through his door, his jaw dropped. Elvis told him he needed his help, that his friend Marcus needed a guitar, a genuinely good one suited to blues and rock and roll, and he wanted the best Carl had. Carl glanced at Marcus, taking in the worn clothes and the nervous expression, and then looked back at Elvis and told them to come on back and they would find something right. For the next 30 minutes Marcus worked through different guitars with Carl guiding him, learning as he went what to listen for and what to feel for in a good instrument, how to test the action and hear the sustain and sense whether the neck felt right in his hands. Elvis watched and offered the occasional thought but mostly let Marcus take his time and find his own way to the right choice. Marcus treated every guitar he picked up with a kind of careful reverence, as though touching something this valuable required real deliberateness. He tried a Martin Dreadnought that had a beautiful tone but was too bright for the kind of music Marcus loved most. He tried a vintage Epiphone that was closer to what he was looking for but still not quite it. Then Carl brought out a Gibson acoustic with a sunburst finish, and the moment Marcus picked it up and played a few notes, his whole face changed. The guitar responded in a way his old one never had, with every note coming out clear and full and sustained exactly as long as it should be. He played a blues run and the guitar answered him back like it was in a conversation with him. He played a few chords and they rang out clean and true. Marcus said softly, almost to himself, that this was the one, that this was it. Elvis leaned forward and asked if he was certain. Marcus said he had never played anything like it in his life, and his voice was full of genuine wonder as he said it, and his eyes were glistening. He said it felt like it had been made specifically for him. Elvis looked over at Carl and asked the price. Carl told him, and the number made Marcus's eyes go wide. It was the kind of money that was likely more than his mother brought home in 2 months. Elvis said sold without hesitating and told Carl to add a hard case, a good quality one, and at least 2 sets of spare strings. Marcus started to say that Elvis did not have to do this, and Elvis told him he knew that he wanted to, and that Marcus had real talent, but talent alone only carried a person so far without the proper tools to work with, and now Marcus was going to have those tools. While Carl was ringing everything up and getting the case ready, Elvis took out his wallet. He paid Carl for the guitar in cash and then took out a considerably larger amount of money and put it in Marcus's hand. Marcus looked at it and asked what it was for. Elvis told him it was so that Marcus did not have to sit on Beale Street for a while, that it was so he could practice properly and really dig into his playing and figure out what he wanted to do with the gift he had been given. Marcus said it was too much and that he could not take it. Elvis said his name firmly but without any harshness and told him something that mattered. He said that when he was starting out there had been people who helped him, people who gave him opportunities he had not felt he deserved. Now he was in a position to do that for someone else, and that was exactly what he was doing. He told Marcus the arrangement was simple. You take the help, you work hard, and when you eventually make it, you find the next person sitting on a corner somewhere with a worn-out guitar and you help them the same way. That was the deal. Did Marcus understand?